It is Friday or Saturday. It's Saturday, not Friday. What the hell am I thinking of? I'm tired, I guess. But it is Saturday, and we have some breaking news. When I say breaking, it's been confirmed. I thought this was the case for a few days, but I wanted to make sure this was the case before I told you. There is, let's see, give a couple people a couple minutes to get in here, a couple seconds to get in here at least, and then we'll go with the news, and then we will go because there's been another, I guess, victory. The DOJ has kept their promises so far, and this is a victory because the DOJ, Walter, if you want to jump on, I sent you the link. The DOJ has decided not to seek cert in uh, the range versus Bondi. This was speculated on a few days ago because the DOJ apparently missed the deadline to file cert, which doesn't mean that they actually missed the deadline because we don't get to see when they file. So the filing at SCOTUS comes out a few days later after they file, so they could have filed cert and it just wasn't posted yet. So I wasn't sure about that. So I decided to wait a little bit and see what came out. And now there is a memo from the DOJ stating that they are not going to seek cert in the range case. You want to talk about the range case, range versus Garland, range versus Bondi, whatever you want to call it. What happened was there was a guy named Andrew Range, who was convicted of food stamp fraud decades ago. And because of that food stamp fraud, which is nonviolent, he lost his gun rights forever. He hasn't committed a crime since then, but he lost his gun rights. So in Range versus Garland, they sued over that, stating that that is unconstitutional, that you cannot lose your rights forever for a non-violent felony. This went up to the circuit court. The circuit court found for Range, and the DOJ at this time under Garland said that they were going to file for a writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court. A writ of certiorari for the Supreme Court means it's a petition to SCOTUS to take the case and decide on the merits of the case. So the deadline passed about a week ago. We didn't hear anything, but that's not uncommon because a lot of times they wait until the last minute to file for a writ of certiorari, and when they file it, it's not put up on the Supreme Court website right away. It could take up to a week to put there. So I figured that they weren't going to file for the writ of certiorari, but I wasn't sure. But now there is a letter that was released by the DOJ stating that they are not going to seek a writ of certiorari. The DOJ filed this letter and submitted it to Congress. So basically, they were stating that, hey, we're not going to file it. They sent this letter over to Dick Durbin on the 11th, and I'm going to share that right now. So just give me 1 second here. Screen share. Here it is. So let me go ahead and add this in. We're just going to read through a little bit of it. I don't have my glasses, of course, because why would I? Pursuant to this is on the 11th, it just came out today that they sent this. Dear Senator Durbin, Dick Durbin is a anti-gun Democrat. Pursuant to 18 USC 530D, I am writing to advise you that the Department of Justice has decided not to file for a writ of certiorari in the above captioned case. A copy of the opinion issued by the en banc of the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit is enclosed. That is the circuit court that ruled that Range had the right to bear arms, even though he was convicted of a felony because it was a non-violent felony. In 18 USC 922G Section 1, Congress prohibits a person from possessing a firearm if he has been convicted of a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year. The plaintiff in this case, Brian Range, was convicted in 1995 for food stamp fraud after he signed an application for food stamps that understated his income. So basically, he got nailed because he actually made up income numbers on his food stamp thing. No other crime, just made up food stamp, whatever. Although the offense, which was classified as a misdemeanor under state law, was punishable by up to 5 years of imprisonment, Range received no jail time. He got probation, but since he could have went to jail for over a year, he lost his gun rights. Range has had a clean record since then, apart from minor traffic and parking infractions and a summary offense of fishing without a license. Not a big deal here. All right. So basically, that was just saying why he lost his gun rights. And yeah, the en banc, which is the full bench of the Third Circuit, held that 922G Section 1 violated the Second Amendment as applied to Range. The court described the decision as narrow, emphasizing that Range's misdemeanor conviction for food stamp fraud was decades old, that Rain had filed a civil suit in which he sought protection for future possession of firearms, and that the record contains no evidence that Range poses a physical danger to others. All right. So let's go ahead and break that down a little bit. So he got convicted in 1995, didn't do anything since then. The only reason why he lost his gun rights is because he could have been put in prison for 5 years, even though he got probation. So it was decades old. So he sued. And Rahimi said a person can be disarmed temporarily if they are a danger to themselves or others. That is Supreme Court precedent. And Range, he was not a danger to himself or others. Now we also got to consider Bruin. Bruin says that a law has to be consistent with the history, text, and tradition of the Second Amendment. There is no disarming of people from the founding era, which is 1791. Or sorry, wow, whatever. The ratification date of the Second Amendment. So because of that, they couldn't rely on that. Now in Rahimi, they said a law does not have to be a historical twin, but an analog has to be remotely similar. And they said that they don't have anything remotely similar. All right. The Department of Justice concluded that a petition for the writ of certiorari is not warranted in this case. The Third Circuit's decision is narrow, leaving Section 922G, Section 1 untouched, except in the most unusual applications. Thank you, Xanthi Misfit, for the $5 super chat. So right there, they're saying that it does not say that them not appealing this case to the Supreme Court, and it's saying that this only applies to violent people, not violent people. So let's go into here. The Supreme Court has previously declined to grant preliminary review when faced with similar decisions, holding Section 922G, Section 1 unconstitutional as applied to a narrow set of circumstances, including at the previous stage of this very case. When they first lost, they appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, we are not going to grant cert at this time because we're not going to do an interlocutory appeal. An interlocutory appeal is when the Supreme Court steps in before the merits of the case has been out there. So they denied it once. And that's what they're talking about there. That was on interlocutory appeal. In addition, the Department of Justice has recently revitalized an administrative process through which individual may retain relief from federal firearms disabilities if they show that the circumstances regarding the disability and the applicant's record and reputation are that the application applicant will not likely act in a manner dangerous to public safety, and that granting the relief would be not contrary to public interest. This is the Mel Gibson thing, where the DOJ for the first time came up with a process that you can get your rights restored for firearms nationally. I'm gonna mark this Ed Bender. I'll come back to the questions in a minute. The application will not like okay, we already read that. Okay. Because the court's appeals have not had the opportunity to consider the effort of that action on a constitutional analysis, and because Range himself would likely qualify for relief under the revitalization process, the Department of Justice have concluded that the Supreme Court intervention is not warranted at this time. Please let me know if I can be of any further assistance on this matter. And that is signed by G. John Sauer, who is the Solicitor General. All right, let's talk about what this means. There's some good things and bad things about this. One, I would have loved to see this go to the Supreme Court and get knocked down. But the thing is, this case is very narrow. So it wouldn't affect all of 922 charges, or even all the 922G charges. What this does is say that if you're a nonviolent felon, the Justice Department will most likely restore your rights, and Range would have his rights restored under the new policy of the DOJ. So they're not going to seek cert in this case because they would restore the rights of nonviolent felons who show that they're not a danger to themselves or others, which is probably a good move. Now, me personally, I believe that if you're not in prison, you should have all your gun rights restored. But this is a start, and it shows that the DOJ is not wanting to disarm nonviolent felons anymore, which is a good thing. And the national process of restoring your gun rights is something that is also great at this time. So it's not perfect because I don't think you should ever lose your gun rights forever. I honestly don't believe that. I believe if you're in prison, maybe, but once you get out, then no, you should not have your gun rights restored. So Range is going to have his I'm mostly nonviolent. That's awesome. Mostly peaceful, fiery protest. So this is a good thing for Range. This is a good thing because it shows that nonviolent felons should have their rights back. Now, if other cases come through the judicial system, they can reference Range and also reference the DOJ deciding not to appeal to the Supreme Court, not to file for that writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court because they believe that nonviolent felons should have their rights back. So any other cases that come through in the future are going to be able to reference this case to make a point that they should not lose their rights. And that might actually help out some of the people that we know and love that right now when they get out, not going to have their gun rights. But they were found guilty of nonviolent crimes. So that might help them get their gun rights faster. I'm talking about Matt and Justin. If we don't get something like the appeal process done. So yeah, does this eliminate anti-two guns good moral standing clauses? No, no, no. It does not. It does not. This case was always narrow, and that's one of the things that people talked about. I want to thank Zanti Misfit for the $5 super chat. Zanti, email me your address. I want to make sure that I got it right to send out because you should have got your patch by now. So I just want to make sure I have the right one. Goombeam. If you haven't checked out Goombeam, check out Goombeam. They make really awesome flashlights. It already is. It's just not supreme. It's not a Supreme Court binding decision, but it will be used as that. So yeah, if you have the if you have faith in the judicial system, 60 years. I do not have faith in the judicial system because I have seen what the judicial system has done to people and friends of mine. The judicial system is broken. It needs to be fixed, but it is a lot better than a lot of other countries. So there's that. What I want to see fixed more than the judicial system is advocate judges and overzealous prosecutors who prosecute people for nonviolent things that they should not have any type of case on. CRS, for example. I do not believe that any law was broken with CRS or Justin, and I would rather see Laura Coffer Taylor lose her job than to see the judicial system broke. Because once you get rid of the advocate judges and the advocate prosecutors that over prosecute people, then we will have a better judicial system. Because overhauling the judicial system is going to be a monumental task. It's easier to get rid of those advocate judges and the overzealous prosecutors than it is to overhaul the whole entire judicial system, if that makes any sense. If you had people who abided by the law, that being judges or prosecutors, then the judicial system really wouldn't be that broken. What I'm trying to say. Ed Bender, thanks for answering your question. No problem, bud. No problem. So yeah, advocate bureaucrats. Yes. And there is another advocate bureaucrat that has been shown the door. I am probably going to do something on that tomorrow when we talk about the new firing at the ATF because he resigned because he was going to get fired. But we'll talk about that tomorrow because there is another victim of the red wedding at the ATF. And there's going to be more victims at the red wedding of the ATF. It's a great time it's not a great time if you're a gun grabber who works at the ATF. I would just say that. I would just say that there's some people at the ATF that are celebrating, and there's some people at the ATF that are crying, and it is glorious. MLN.com, that's where I write for. Thank you, Johnny. Delete the ATF. Shut down the ATF, as my song that I commissioned says. We should definitely do that. Cue the song. If you guys want the song, I'll play the song. But I would need at least 10 people saying they want to hear the song. That's the shut down the ATF video. Yep. I have more stories coming out. I also did a story. Play it. Okay. I also did a story about the Nix checks audit monitoring system that was over. But yeah, play it. I guess people want to play it. All right. When we go out, we'll play it. But yeah, that's it. Just wanted to make you guys aware of what is going on. And with that, I might do a John Crump Alive tonight. I'm not sure yet, but we will see it. And with that, we're out of here. Let me go ahead and play the song out. If I have it. Yep, I do. And